just so that we can put this onto our webpage as needed. So Howard, if you would not mind introducing yourself.
Sure thing. Thanks, Sandy. So my name's Howard Green, and I direct workforce development and student success at Ohio State, but specifically the Starlab George Washington Carver Science Park. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a little bit.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I am going to go ahead and get the presentation going. We will have spots throughout the presentation where you are welcome to ask questions. If you do have questions as we're speaking, if you don't mind, I just ask that you hold them until we get to a break or type them into the chat and we'll be happy to answer them for you. We also have Christine Lalor-King with us, and she is here. Hi, Christine. Do you want to just do a quick introduction for yourself as well?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Sandy. Hi, everyone. My name is Christine Lawler-King. I am a science educator who is working with the Ohio Invention League and Invention Convention program. So I'll be talking to you a little bit about that later.
All right. I am so sorry. I just realized I did not share my sound with you, and that would not be very conducive for what we're going to be doing. Howard, I have lost my screen availability to see people, so if you can guide me, I would greatly appreciate it.
Sure thing.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so this year, our agenda for this evening is we're going to be reviewing this year's challenge. We're going to look through the Design Challenge Teacher's Guidebook. So if you have registered for the Design Challenge already on our page, you should have received a copy of that. If by chance you have not registered yet, it's okay. You're going to get a preview of it this evening, and then you'll be able to go in and register for it if you would like that. We're going to go through the guidelines of what it actually is to enter the Design Challenge and where you find all of those things. Howard is going to tell us about Expert Links and Space Bites, which is a really exciting interactive program with experts in the space industry. And then we'll have some information from our partners that are also doing challenges that are I don't want to say commingle, that sounds kind of odd, but ways to extend our design challenge. And then we'll have time for more questions at the end. All right, and first.
Hello, and welcome. I'm Jimmy Kenyon, Director of NASA's Glenn Research Center in Cleveland. I'm excited to join this kickoff event for the 2024 Design Challenge. Thank you for being here and for your interest in science, technology, engineering, and math. Your support to Ohio students in these key academic areas is invaluable. This year's Design Challenge centers around sustainability in space and how we might apply what we learn to life here on Earth. These are critical areas for NASA. Space is a busy place, and it's getting busier. Thousands of satellites orbiting the Earth have become essential to our everyday lives. We rely on them for communications, defense, safety, weather, and so much more. Space exploration is expanding too. We're working with private industry to go farther than ever before and stay for longer. But with new exploration comes new responsibility to preserve our solar system and beyond for generations to come. But as the burgeoning space economy grows, so does our footprint. Space waste poses both a risk and a nuisance. If your car broke down along the highway, you'd make sure it was moved. Or if you dropped a soda can on the sidewalk, you'd pick it up. We have to do the same with debris in space. We also have to continue to develop long-lasting and reusable materials and create them responsibly. We have to solve the problem of sustainable power in space to build a long-lasting presence on the moon. I'm certain what we discover will be transformative for life in space as well as on Earth. Like so many times before, our discoveries out there will lead to real-life applications here. This has the potential to make our planet healthier, safer, and more livable for generations to come. The possibilities are endless if we are responsible. So thank you, and good luck with the challenge. I look forward to seeing what new ideas your students bring forth.
All right, and my screen totally shifted at that point in time. Howard, can you still see the screen?
I sure can.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And you could hear the video okay?
Yeah, it was, for me, it was
Excellent.
fine.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. And Howard at this point is going to share a little bit more about our partnership, both what Starlab has with its organization and a little bit about what we do together.
Thanks, Sandy. So that was an invitation from Jimmy Kenyon, who is the director of NASA's Glenn Research Center up in Cleveland area. Some of you may be from that area. And he is enough of a proponent and supporter of what we're doing that he wanted to give that video message for this kickoff. We're in a really interesting transition right now from sort of a NASA dictated, government designed, owned and operated kind of endeavors into space to now more commercially procured launch services for people and cargo. So very, very different. So we've got SpaceX, we've got lots of players in this environment and lots of industry potential partners who are very interested, especially in low Earth orbit and new products and processes and very exciting innovations going to be coming out of that. So it's a very different environment from when we had space shuttle launches just not that many years ago. Go ahead.
Trying. There we go.
So we have had now a continuous human and American presence in space since November of 2000. So you see the International Space Station, and you'll hear me use the acronym ISS often, but this is a wonderful multilateral, multi-nation effort and laudable. We've learned amazing things, but when we look at the technology there, at least the core of it is 1990s, and so this International Space Station didn't have its full functionality even coming until maybe 2010, something like that. But it is quickly becoming obsolete in many ways, and the partnerships with the nations are changing as we're going to more of commercial partnerships. We need a U.S.-based space station for our own needs. So there were 3 awards, as you see here, that were made in December of 2021 for commercial free-flying space stations in low Earth orbit. And the exciting thing, go to the next page. So the exciting aspect is that Ohio State was part of this consortium that has been involved with Starlab. Starlab is the US-based next generation space station for commercial interests, and will be launched here at probably the end of 2028, maybe as late as first quarter of 2029. To give overlap. So you see this no gap in LEO. Well, that's gap in operations with the International Space Station. So the Starlab will be launched actually all in one unit, one launch. It'll deploy from a cargo bay on likely SpaceX's Starship, which is still in the testing phases right now, but it'll be completely functional right out of the cargo bay, which is really exciting. It's a little smaller, as you can imagine. The International Space Station has come together over many years. A little bit, I liken it to the way maybe hospitals start to gain functionality. They'll put on a wing, they'll get another bit of money and put on another area of the hospital, and then you get done with it and you say, if we had everything to plan up front, we wouldn't have done it quite the same way. Well, Starlab has wonderful luxury in that it will be launched and deployed all at one time and be fully functional. About 4 astronauts. I think it'll accommodate up to 6. There are basically 3 floors in it. It's an 8-meter or about 25-foot diameter. We have a part of the partnership that we have is with Hilton Hotels. There are a number of other companies, Voyager Space, Airbus, Mitsubishi, and those are all on this slide as you see here. The part that Ohio State does, and I think I get to that in an ensuing slide, so I'll go to the next slide, is they're threefold, really. So this idea of a science park, now that may be a little curious to you, but We have on the north side of the OSU airport about 80 acres that are being held for development of this science park. So it's a place where startup companies for incubator function, all kinds of innovations that are going to come out of low Earth orbit can be located, and very close then to, if you look down here in the lower right, the ground location, there's going to be a high fidelity model. So that means Starlab, except for being in microgravity, a full functional model inside part of that facility on those 80 acres. And that will allow us to do payload research, testing, integration, astronaut training, a bunch of other things that will really allow this platform to be fully utilized by our customers. And then on the lower left, well, not quite, workforce development and student success. And that's where I am. So it's how do we get the next generation of talent that is not only aware of these careers, but is making steps to prepare themselves for it. So how do we do that? And that's the challenge that I'm involved with, and this partnership with Ohio STEM Learning Network. Go ahead. So you've heard the name George Washington Carver Science Park. His namesake, Dr. George Washington Carver. A lot of people may, from history books, remember him as the peanut farmer. Certainly many more contributions to agriculture than just peanuts, though. Just a world-renowned agronomist, scientist, innovator, simple things like rotation of crops that we do regularly and take for granted and say, well, that's obvious. Well, it wasn't obvious in his day, and really an amazing innovator as an agronomist. And so we have named it after Dr. George Washington Carver. And so this would be the first space-focused research park that has, I say, locations in space, namely Starlab, and then also on Earth, which is the science park, which is going to be in connection with the Starlab. University, government, private sector, all of those would be involved. It's not just NASA payloads. It's going to be primarily commercial payloads. And workforce development, education, and outreach mission is an integral part of who we are and what we do. And we haven't broken ground yet, but that'll be sometime likely late spring to early summer of next year. Go ahead. So some of you may be wondering, okay, so what's this big deal? We've had the International Space Station up there for some time, but underneath all of that, what changes in low Earth orbit? And so you see there's a picture there in the middle, which has a flame, and that's on the left what a flame looks like in 1G or Earth's gravity. On the right is what it looks like in microgravity. Very, very different. So when you think about convection, and that's one of the things going on here, right? We often say hot air rises, right? Well, not in 0G or microgravity. Hydrostatic pressure, diffusion, capillary action, a lot of things that are, sort of basic physics here on Earth behave differently in the absence of gravity. And it allows us to discover and to develop many things that we can't do because gravitational force tends to swamp out a lot of other very interesting phenomena. You see there on the right, there is a picture of a water droplet. That's what a water droplet looks like in microgravity, perfectly spherical. Whereas with surface tension, it would look very different. You see, that's another aspect that is different in microgravity. So it's not just interesting, but also allowing us to discover incredible things and innovate in some very interesting ways. And there are lots of companies that are interested in joining in this endeavor. Go ahead. So the challenge here is specifically, are we going to, just a second.
Yeah, we're going to show the video.
Okay, good. I was going to say, so we had one invitation, and I'll give just a little bit of it, interlude to this, was Jimmy Kenyon. The other is, we were in touch here just last week with NASA headquarters. They have a sustainability office. They actually have a person who is newly named as responsible for sustainability over all of NASA. And his name is Alvin Drew. He is he's a former astronaut. He was a shuttle astronaut, International Space Station, and he agreed in some conversation to also give an invitation to you to be part of this design challenge. So we'll play that.
Hi, I'm Alvin Drew, NASA's lead for space sustainability. Before I was the lead for NASA space sustainability, I was an astronaut in the years 2000 to 2012, where I got to help build the International Space Station. When I left NASA's astronaut corps, the first thing I got to do was work on what was called the Deep Space Habitat. It was a spacecraft about the size of the International Space Station that was designed to go to Mars and back. Think about it. The year 2040, we've been on the moon for more than a decade, and now we're on our way to Mars. Where will you be during that time? What will you be doing? When I was thinking about this particular project, one of the first things that bubbled to the top was, how do we sustain ourselves on such a long mission without any resupply? There are open systems and there are closed systems. Your home is an open system. Things come into your house, things go out of the house. Water comes in through a spigot, water goes out through the drains. Air comes in through your windows and your air conditioning system. Air also goes out through the doors and windows as well too. All your trash comes in by the way of things you buy, and they go out of the house in your trash cans and go away on garbage day. If you're on the space station, all those things have to wait until a resupply ship comes and either drops off supplies for you and takes your waste home. And you have to manage that waste and your supplies during that time. When you're on a 3.5-year round trip journey to Mars, there's nothing coming or going. Everything you have with you is all you have. So you must make the best use of what you have, but then you have to worry about waste. Humans are good for 4 things. We breathe, we drink, we eat, and we make waste. The first 3 things require things we're going to use, and waste is something we get rid of. So can we recycle that waste and turn it into something good so we can take less with us? Right now, given our current way we have propulsion, for every pound of things we take to Mars and bring home, it takes 1,000 pounds of gas. So we want to take as little as possible with us and really use what we have. So if you're in a closed environment, there are some simple rules that you can follow. 1, don't make a mess, or make as little mess as you possibly can. 2, if you do make a mess, try and recycle it so you don't have to bring more things with you. 3, if you can't recycle those things, try and get rid of your mess. Don't leave it out as a bother for everybody else. And finally, 4, if you're going to leave your mess out there for everybody to deal with, prepare to pay the penalty for that, either in terms of crew member anger or just fines. These are things that we can do, things that you can do in the future when you're considering your design challenge. But think about it. It's the year 2040. We've been on the moon for more than 10 years now, and we're on our way to Mars. What are the things that we must consider in terms of making ourselves sustainable on that journey? Good luck to all of you, and we look forward to your brilliant ideas. Again, I'm Alvin Drew, and this is NASA.
So sorry. So getting into what this year's challenge is, obviously you've signed up to come to this kickoff event virtually, so you have some ideas. But our challenge this year was actually a 2-year collaboration. We've worked with Starlab and Howard for the last year, and we decided the second year we could go in a little bit more in depth. And we had all these teachers who are already experts, and why would we not reutilize the same idea? So this year's challenge is, how do we improve the sustainability of life in low Earth orbit, such as living aboard the Starlab space station? So our challenge this year is twofold. One is to develop a plan, system, or product to positively impact the sustainable use of materials, habitable space, and/or energy. So this is a student or students can go in and look at materials that are already being used, materials that might be going to the space station, space, how can space be reimagined to have multiple uses, because that has to be sustainable as well. And the second part is to demonstrate how these improvements could translate to more sustainable living here on Earth. At our kickoff last week on Thursday, I brought up an example. I'm going to age myself. Whereas when I was a child, there wasn't freeze dried. They didn't have things that were freeze dried. You'd have dried fruits and things, but like freeze dried coffee or freeze dried packets that you put into water, those didn't exist when I was a child. It was when the man went to the moon. I think I was 5 years old when I saw the first step on the moon. That's when they suddenly started realizing that they could freeze dry things. That was like the catalyst. So that's what we're looking at. It's like, how is this improvement that they're doing in space? How can it translate to something here on Earth to make our life more sustainable as we are going through? So when we were talking about this, we came up with a few ideas that your students can focus on, and they aren't limited to these. These are just ideas that we wanted to give you to kind of spark some interest. So develop a new way to reuse or recycle materials. Improve the generation of oxygen so that it's more reliable or efficient. I'm not going to read all of these because obviously you can as well. Improve how electricity is generated, distributed, or used or conserved so that it's more efficient. Combine multiple space station functions to reduce the amount of physical space required for a system. Develop a new way to create, store, or use food so that there's less waste. We found out last year that they can't take bread on the International Space Station because it makes crumbs and there's nowhere for those crumbs to go. So that was kind of one of those interesting things. And we had a student who was very interested to find out that a lot of times they just currently jettison their waste into space. So we're almost creating our own issues because we're creating space junk, right? So how can we reuse things so that we are being good stewards of that environment? Reduce the byproducts of growing plants, right? And then any other ideas that your students might have. We don't want to limit it. We just want to see what's expansive. Any questions so far? Okay. So going on, we're going to talk a little bit about the guidebook. So I'm just curious, if you could in the chat, if you participated in last year's challenge, write a 1. And if you're new to the challenge, type a 2. So that'll give me some idea of how many people are new. Oh, wonderful. This is great. So exciting. All right, so hopefully this is going to be, you're going to find this very useful. And I apologize for not being able to get this bar off the top of the screen, but my monitor is not letting me access that area. If you have registered for the design challenge already on our webpage, you should have received the guidebook. If you have not registered for the design challenge yet, don't worry, there's plenty of time. You can still do that. But we do have a guidebook, and it is a step-by-step process of how to complete the design challenge. So we are true believers in design thinking and using the design cycle to promote creative thinkers for making our students more self-sufficient and helping them guide their own learning. So that is kind of the thought process behind how we designed the guidebook. There's links in the guidebook, there are resources in the guidebook, and again, we'll go over those a little bit later. And then how to use the guidebook to help you coordinate with the Ohio Academy of Science and the Ohio Invention League, which you might know as Invention Convention. We have all of that information contained in the book. So if you are doing the design challenge, it is very, very easy to transfer that information for your students to be able to do some of our sister competitions, which would be the Ohio Academy of Science. This is science fair. So if your school traditionally does science fair, design challenge leads right into it. We've worked for the last 2 years to really coordinate and make sure our dates align. And we have ways that this part of the design challenge connects to this part of the Science Fair and Ohio Academy of Science. And in a little bit, Christine will be talking also about how you can integrate what we're doing in Design Challenge into the Invention League, or as some of you might know, Invention Convention. So all of that is listed inside of that guidebook, along with calendars about all the different dates for those activities. And then the guidebook itself. So we're going to just go through the guidebook, and hopefully I'm going to stop sharing screen if I can. And I'm going to actually open my guidebook up, and then I'm going to go back to sharing screen. So Howard, let me know if you can see the guidebook yet. I don't know why I've lost my share screen. There we go. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, it is not allowing me to share my screen. Give me one moment. All right, can you see the guidebook?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Okay, so when you get into the guidebook, there's just a basic how-to. How do you use the guidebook? And there's also information here about Starlab. So if you are, whoops, sorry, I don't know what happened there. If you are working with students and they want to learn more about Starlab, that is all listed here. And there are links within the guidebook as well, where you can do some more investigating. It talks a little bit about Expert Link and Space Bites, which are where students actually can interact with space professionals, and Howard will cover that a little bit later. There are links here to documents, and these documents will show you the guidelines and the calendars for both Invention Convention and State Science Day, which is Science Fair, so that if you have any questions about those, it'll take you immediately over to their websites as well. A basic introduction, and then down here is our web page. So if you forget a date or a time, you can just go into your guidebook, which you will have electronically, and just click on the link. We do spend a little bit talking about what design thinking is. If design thinking is new to you, there are some videos at the bottom that are very, very helpful. Some of them are more teacher oriented and some of them are student oriented, but it talks about how we go through this cycle of thinking and we do it very continually. And as adults, we do that, right? We're always thinking, working, doing, reflecting, doing again, reflecting, doing again, etc. So, a whole section on design thinking. There's the actual design challenges written out in the book. And then your steps. Your first step in any design cycle is identifying the problem that you would like to solve. And again, at the bottom of each of these pages, there are videos. So if you're uncertain what to do, you can easily click on these. It'll give you directions. Brainstorming. So this is where your students will be going in and figuring out what they want to do. And again, a couple of sites available for that. Step 3 is plan and prototype. 4 is redesign and reimagine, and then communicate and share. So that's just like one round through the design cycle. But your students will do multiple rounds through the design cycle and through design thinking. And that should be anticipated. The one thing that you will want to make sure your students are doing is working in groups. That is one of the requirements for the design challenge, is you have to be in groups of 2 to 4. We do not accept individuals because part of the STEM pedagogy that we promote is the fact that we need to be collaborators and we need to be expansive thinkers. And that is best done in a group environment. So we do require teams of 2 to 4. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And maybe your students are going through and they're doing really great and you're like, but I don't know how to grade this, or I don't even know what to look for. Like, what is it we should be looking for? So we have down here at the bottom, we do have links. And if you notice, we have K2, 3.5, and 6.12. And I'm just going to click on the 6.12 link to show you. It is a rubric. And we talk about being a master, a journeyman, an apprentice, or a student. These would be the same kinds of things you'd find if you were in a skilled trade. So we talk about the problem, right? Every student's going to solve a different problem. We are not as concerned about what the problem is they're solving as to how they think about the problem and how the process of their solving that problem. We don't require a prototype, right? What we require is students to be able to articulate what their problem was, how they solved the problem, and their learning process through the entire thing. So if they come up with a prototype, that's great. But if they just have a piece of paper with a sketch on it, that's just as fine, as long as they can tell us like what the thought was behind that. So there are rubrics here that you can use to grade projects. We talk about design thinking. There are the actual supports, like how much research did they do? What evidence did they have? We talk about their visual presentation. So this is where you can talk about eye contact and if they like their volume of speaking, etc. So we did include these rubrics for you so that it makes it a little bit easier if you are going to be grading them, because we know, especially if you're doing this for the first time, it can be very, very challenging. So we do have those at 3 different levels. Also, on those areas of focus that we listed earlier, we have, here's oxygen generation, water and space, food and plants in space. We've gone through and we have pulled top websites that you can use for your students to do their research. So it isn't just going to be go out and do research. We actually have some leads for you here that the students can access as well. And this is page 15. And if you're writing any notes, star page 15. Page 15 has everything you need to be able to enter the challenge. And we'll go over the specific guidelines in a little bit, but there's a link to the required elements. There's a link to the submission page. There's a link to our webpage. My email address is here. Amy DeGorcia is one of my colleagues. Her email address is here as well. And then our calendar of events can be found on our webpage. So page 15 is the one that you need if you choose to enter students in the statewide design challenge. If you're going to register a team, if you're thinking your students might want to compete at the state level, you should register your team no later than December 12th. Right now, they don't have to have their videos done by then. They don't have to have their project done by then, but that just lets us know that you're thinking that your students might want to participate in the state challenge. If they do want to participate in the state challenge, those entries are due by January 13th. Now, some people do the design challenge as a quarter-long project. They might do it every Friday for an entire quarter. We've had some people where they have done it as, we have 3 days before Thanksgiving and I need something for them to do. So they spend 3 days in their science class and they do it in 3 days, right? Remember, they're not having to build a product. We're just looking for like their thought process through it. So they should have designs and sketches and ideas, but they don't necessarily have to have a finished product. So that takes some of the constraints off of it. You don't have to spend a lot of time doing this if you choose not to. The one thing we do ask is that you only submit 1 entry per grade band for your school. So if you teach 7th and 8th grade, and your school is a 6-8, we would ask that you choose 1 project, if you have your whole class doing it, just 1 project, which would be the one that you would submit to the statewide challenge. Does that mean your other students can't do it? No. Everybody in the classroom can do it. We've had schools where they've had outside people come in and use the rubric and grade them and decide which one they think is the most successful, and that's the one they submit for the state competition. We do offer certificates for every single student, so they will all get a certificate that says that they participated in the design challenge, and you'll be able to fill in names on those and have those. So you can have like a local competition in your school, or you could just have maybe your after school group do it and just have 1 group do it. That's fine, however you would like, but we ask that there's only 1 submission per grade band. And grade bands are K5, 6-8, and 9-12. So if you're in a K-8 building, that means you could have a K-5 submission and you could have a 6-8 submission. If you're somebody, I was just speaking with a gentleman who teaches 5th and 6th grade, he can actually have 2 submissions, 1 for 5th grade and 1 for 6th grade, because the break is between 5th and 6th grade. So just keep that in mind as well. Oh, and this one has not been updated. Our showcase will be on March 4th of this year. So we take all of the entries that come in January. They get sent out for judging. And when they come back in, we have a winner in each of our regions. We have 7 winners, or 7 regions, and each region gets a winner in all 3 grade bands. So that's 21 hub winners throughout the state, which is wonderful. They get a certificate, they get acknowledgement for that. And then we look at the entire state. We take our top 21 teams from the entire state, no matter what their grade band is, and they're invited to Battelle for a showcase at the end of, actually at the beginning of March this year. Also in our guidebook, you'll find sticker challenge, our sticker contest. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then our Ohio Academy of Science, the calendar. So if you notice here, design challenge is in the first column, and this tells you what is due for each month all the way through. And then we have the same thing for the next for the Ohio Invention League, right? So you go here and design challenges on the left and Ohio Invention League is on the right. So there's links there and they're all the important dates that go with it. So questions? And again, Howard, I can't see the meeting, so if there's a question, you're gonna have to let me know.
I'm not seeing anything, Sandy.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for talking, though. I was kind of worried that maybe I had lost all of you. All right. There's a lot of information, everybody, and I'm very sorry, but we are trying to get through it so that we do leave time at the end for questions for you. We do offer a sticker contest. So if you find all of this extremely overwhelming and you're just like, wow, I just don't even know where to start. This is my first time doing this. We do have a sticker contest. And even a lot of schools will use this to get their students in that design thinking mindset before they actually dive into the challenge. So our sticker contest is actually for water bottle stickers. We know how much the students love water bottle stickers, right? So this year we have a guidebook. It is a step-by-step guide, very similar to our regular guidebook for the actual challenge. And the guidebook has step-by-steps. This is what you do. This one is more specific. So there's actually a teacher guidebook, and it says, teachers, you should do this with your students. Then you should do this with your students. So it's meant to be a way for you to get comfortable with design thinking while your students are doing it. So we have the step-by-step guide through the design process. And then we also have worksheets. There's 2 worksheets that are included, and they're printable, and they're directions for your students. When we typically don't do this, but we thought some people would like to have the scaffold. So we have one for elementary, for K-5, and it is basically your students can check off, I did this, I did this, I did this. And then we have one for 6-12. And essentially what we're asking students to do is design a sticker based on this year's design challenge theme. And what you see on your screen right now are actually 2 years ago. These were the stickers from our 2023 design challenge. The one on the left is the high school. The one in the middle is the elementary, and the one on the right is the middle school. So we do the same grade bands. The students on the left actually used a computer to generate that idea. And then the student in the middle was actually just a sketch, right? There's a round document when you open up the sticker challenge. There's a paper and it's got an 8-inch circle, and your students design in that circle. We take those entries and we send them the winning entry off to a graphic artist, and the graphic artist cleans it up. So you can still tell the one in the middle was done by a student because it still has that quality to it. But the graphic artist makes it look very professional, and then they put the ring around it so that it looks very consistent all the way across. But it's just a nice entry point for design thinking if you're not used to it. These deadlines are a little bit different. So you can register for the guidebook now. It's the same page that you would register for the design challenge between now and December 3rd to get that guidebook. Your student entries are due on December 4th. Many teachers will do this as a 1 or 2 day activity or a fill-in activity if they have a substitute in their classroom. But just be aware, you can get the guidebook up till the 3rd, but student entries are due on the 4th of December. And the reason that is because we actually have them printed, and they're distributed during our design challenge state showcase, which is kind of neat. We will announce the winners on the 22nd of January. Students get a nice plaque that has their sticker enlarged on it, one for themselves, one for their school. So your school would also get the plaque. And then we make 100 stickers for the student to distribute to their family and friends. And then we have another 50 stickers for the teacher to distribute around your school if you would like. And then we take the remaining 350 and we actually use them for promotions at our statewide summit, which will be happening in June this year, and at our showcase, which will be happening in March. So they're used to promote OSLN sessions, et cetera, for the full calendar year. So it's kind of a neat way that your students' work gets to be seen across all of the state. So questions at this point? We're hearing crickets. Wow, okay. Howard, anything to add?
No, we're good. There's nothing in the chat. And
okay,
so I think we're good to go.
Sounds great. All right. So moving on, guidelines for participation. So these are our guidelines for how you participate in the design challenge itself. There is, when you go on to your page 15, it will link you to this sheet, which is your guidelines for competition. And I'm going to pull my other screen over. Let's see if I can get it to pop. All right, can you see that? All right.
Yes.
So thank you so much. If you notice at the top, dates to remember, it has the submission date for your video. It lets you know when we're going to announce the winner. So if your team happens to win, we'll announce you on February 1st. And that gives you about a month to be able to arrange bus transportation to Columbus. There's a bunch of forms we have to have you fill out. And all of that happens between February 1st and usually like the 20th of February. And then March 1st is when the actual state showcase happens at Battelle. The state showcase, by the way, we bring in experts from across the industry. We bring in experts from Battelle. You'll have engineers there. Last year we had a former astronaut. I'm sorry, a woman who trained former astronauts. Forgive me. Howard, who else did we have at the showcase? Do you remember?
I think you've covered them. So yeah, so right, we had Steve Dakin from ODEW. We had Emily Matula from Johnson Space Center, as you said. I'm trying to think of who else spoke at that event, but yes.
Yeah,
And
we had Vice President of Battelle was there.
That's right.
So some very very strong people in the education community.
Say, Sandy, there is a question out
Sure.
here. I think I know the answer, but Becky is asking, says there is a separate registration for the water bottle sticker, correct?
That is correct. That is correct. And I'll show you when we get all done. I'll take you over to the webpage and I can show you where you can find all of those things. Absolutely. Nice. Good question. Good question. So here it says register here to participate in the design challenge competition prior to submitting your video. This is where you would actually go out to our statewide design challenge page and make sure you get registered. And I will show you this at the end. And that's where you'll also register for the guidebook. Submissions must include a signed copy of the consent form. There is a consent form. I'm not going to blow this up a lot, but when you submit a video to us, we need to have the parent permission for that video to be seen publicly. And it doesn't go out to like the general public. We do not post these online, etc. But they do get sent out to the experts, some of the space experts. They do get sent to the people within OSLN. They will get sent to our hub directors. They might get sent to like Christine from the Invention Convention, to our judges. And we just want to make sure parents are aware that we are sending those videos to people, right? So that we want to make sure that it's full disclosure. We have had in the past, we had a teacher who had a student who was a foster student whose parent did not feel comfortable signing the release form. So what she did was she just put a smiley face in on the young lady's face in the video when she was talking. And we are our major concern is that we keep our students safe. So please understand that if you can't get this consent signed, there are ways we can work through that and you can let us know. But we do ask that there is a consent, that parents know that these are going to be shared out. Talks about being all submissions must be understandable and accessible. If you hold a showcase at your school level, that you are responsible to have just one team per grade group, right? I can't stress that enough. One team per grade group. And then as you go down, here are the submission guidelines for 612. So 612, your students will be asked to create a video talking about what they made. Some students literally will stand, there'll be 4 of them, and they'll have a prototype or they'll have pictures in their hands, and they'll be just like, this is what I made, and this is what we're talking about. They might show the design cycle that they use, right? Like this is the design thinking cycle we used, and this is how we went through this process. But it's all done verbally, and it's just done as a presentation, similar to what I'm doing right now. There are some students who choose to do voiceovers on slides. So they might have their design cycle on their slide, they might have some pictures on their slides, and they do voiceover and they talk over that. That's fine as well. Whatever the students are comfortable with, we just do ask that they have all of the things that they need. So here we need names of the team members, pictures of the team, clear statement of the problem, explanation of why the problem was important to solve, a visual of the design cycle, any research findings or anything they found interesting, description of the problem they chose, if they have a visual model or a prototype, and describing the process that they went through. So those are the guidelines that are on this page. If you have a K-5 group, you have a couple of options. One is you can choose to do the video just like the older grade levels, or You could do a poster presentation where your students just create like a poster and they can just talk about their poster. That's fine as well. Remember, we aren't as interested in the quality of the video as we are in the content. We're looking at how they're using that design cycle. There are a number of people that we've had that have done very basic poster presentations, but they've been done such an amazing job of explaining that they've actually scored very, very well. In addition, we also, for K-5 level, we have this book, and actually some of our older students will use this, and they will go through and they'll fill out the whole thing, and then they'll do their voiceover with it. So, and it just goes page by page. This is your introduction. This is what you need, right? Here's what your problem statement is. You might have to write some more about your problem statement. Next tab is your design cycle you used. Some extra pages for that. Your research and findings. You continue on with what your research and findings are, your solution and your problem. If you have a model or a prototype, if you want to show that, you can embed some videos in here. How you tested your prototype. What was your reflection? Like, what did you decide after it was done? Other experiences you want to put in here. And then basically you're done, right? So a lot of people will choose to do that as well. The big thing to remember is it can only be 5 minutes long. Because if you think about it, if we have 100 entries at 5 minutes, that's 500 minutes of entries that we have to send out to be judged, and that's a lot. So we do have it limited to 5 minutes. And then at the bottom, it just says to submit here. And when you click on this, it will bring you to our submission page. And again, this has the key dates on it. Let me see if I can get this to go larger. Here we go. Your key dates. Again, the top 21 teams will be sent by invitation. They'll get an invitation to come on March 4th. Here's the guideline document, enter it again. And then your full name, what your information, your contact information, your phone number, what grade levels of students you have, approximately how many students total. So if you had a whole grade level do it, you might have 120 here. If you just had one class, you might say 30. If it was an after school group, it might be 15, whatever it is. Your school name, an IRN, and there's a link here if you don't know to find that. And then the full name of your team members. Now notice there are only 4 spots. We have had a whole class do the design challenge, a kindergarten class do the design challenge as a class. And what we asked them to do, and not meaning that like there were groups of 4 within the class, but the whole class did it together. And what we asked them to do was pick their 4 representatives that were going to represent their class. And those are the names of the students they put in here, right? And then how to upload you're going to upload files. You're going to pick which option you did and then go forward from there. Any questions about that? Okay, timeline. Right, we're kind of late fall right now. Introduce the design challenge, check on OSLN.org for resources. There's a virtual question and answer session that will happen in October and November. You can always reach out to me. I try to be extremely good about responding within a day, maybe 2. In December, if you're doing the sticker challenge, those entries are due by the 9th. If you're thinking you might want to register a group for January's competition, you can put, make sure you register your school by the 12th of December. And you can just be implementing the challenge the whole time. If you are going to submit, you need to submit by January 13th.
So Sandy,
yes,
just a quick thought on the registration deadline of December 12th. That is the latest possible date. We're going to be talking in just a minute about some support that we offer with Expert Link and Space Bites and all of that. Really, for an Expert Link panel to be in your school or to be linking with your school, you're going to want to do that much earlier than that. So that's a last possible date, but we're really
Correct.
encouraging you to do that earlier.
Correct. We had somebody who was doing this good point, Howard. We had somebody who was doing this in their school last year, and they found out about the challenge really, really late. So they actually registered their team, but they didn't choose to participate with a state competition. They wanted to do this in the spring because it lined up with their curriculum better, right? So they registered their team. They got all of the resources that we had online, and they just did it in the spring as an independent study, knowing that their students wouldn't be in the state competition. They still did the rubrics that we had. They still had their competition at their school because that's what they wanted to do, but they just chose not to participate in our state competition just because of deadlines, et cetera. But when you hear about Expert Link, I think you're going to be really excited about it because it is kind of an exciting opportunity for students. In February, we'll send out our top 21 teams. Those are the top 21 scoring teams. So even if your team wins a hub, that doesn't mean they're coming to Battelle, because we look at the top scores from across the state. And then we have the 21 teams coming into Battelle on March 4th for our statewide showcase. Must-haves. Teams must be 2 to 4 people. No individual students. Now, if you have a team of 2 and somebody is sick the day of, that's understandable, but we're looking for teams of students. If you choose to do the Ohio Academy of Science competition, please know that their program only allows 3 students maximum in a group. So if you're thinking you're going to be doing Ohio Academy of Science, make sure you remember that your maximum group size will be 3. There will be 1 lead teacher per building. So let's say you do it and 2 other teachers from your building do it. We ask that one of you be the lead teacher for your entire building. Doesn't matter how many other teachers participate, but there's a lot of information that'll start coming out, especially when it comes to Expert Link, which Howard will talk about in a moment. And it's really important that we have one person that we're contacting and working with back and forth, and then they're the person who disseminates the information. So if there's 3 or 4 of you in your building, make sure you have somebody who's very detail oriented, be that lead teacher, so that you know where to get your information from and that they will share that information out with you. Virtual presentations will be submitted and determined by hub level. So that's when you put your virtual presentation in January. If you'd like it to be judged, know that it'll go into a regional competition in addition to the state competition. So there's 2 opportunities for your students there. And then again, the top 21 teams in the state will be invited to Battelle downtown to spend the morning with sharing what they've learned, talking with all of the experts. We treat them to lunch, and then we send them home in the afternoon. Howard, what was the one, I'm trying to think of the young lady last year. They ended up having bus problems, and they ended up on
it's a party van or
a party van.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like a party limo, like you'd get for a wedding. And thank you, Howard, for reminding me of that, right? And her comment to her principal who was with her was like, this is the best day ever, because they got to ride around in this giant party van, and they came from Cleveland. So it was quite an event for them. All right, questions? Okay, you guys are very quiet. All right, Howard, you're up.
Sure thing. So I just want to talk briefly about this challenge, how it came about a little bit with respect to the partnership that we're now engaged in. When I first joined this team at Ohio State, all I could think of is, okay, so I'm workforce development, but look at what an exciting opportunity this is to engage the students across the state in learning about this and being directly engaged in it. And it just seemed like it was a tremendous opportunity. So approached Ohio STEM Learning Network with Kelly Geyer Evans and with Sandy, and got with her team. And so last year we had the first of these 2 now design challenges based upon Starlab. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the innovations, because it wasn't so much how do we draft the best design challenge statement. I think we have very good design challenge statements, but that's not what this is all about. It's about, okay, how can we support you in ways that teachers and classrooms around the states need? And so if you go to the next slide.
It's not letting me, hang on one moment. Here we go.
That's right. So
That's
this is, you talk about what keeps you up at night. This is what kept me up at night. It's like, okay, how can we support this? We don't want to just throw a design challenge statement over the wall at an entity and have them struggle, and all the students and classrooms and teachers struggle with it. It's like, I am connected to many, many incredible and passionate space experts. Now, you might say, oh, astronauts. Well, so interestingly, over the last year, I have met 2 former and 3 current astronauts, but that's not the height of what I do or what I see. Honestly, it's all of the people who support the amazing things happening in space. They are deeply passionate about what they do. They want to share it. They want to share it with students and with the next generation. And so my challenge was, how are we going to get students across the state of Ohio who are working on a space-based design challenge? How are we going to get them the support that they need and the content knowledge that they need? And so that's how this thing, as I'm going to talk about here in the next slide, called Expert Link, basically was born. So what you see on the right-hand side is a collage of screen captures. Yes, I got permission from those teachers so that we could share those images. They were shared on LinkedIn, but these are experts. Matter of fact, the one at the very top there, his name is Luigi. He was joining us from Torino, Italy. And he was first in Southern California, and he said, Howard, I have to go back to my university in Italy, and I still want to do this Expert Link thing. And I said, I'm not going to stop you. I mean, you'll have to coordinate the time zone. So literally yesterday, we had another training this year for the new design challenge, and Luigi was on that call yesterday, and it was at least 11 o'clock at night when we got off it for him. So anyway, these are an incredible group of passionate individuals who want to help your classrooms. It will be in the form of panels, 2 to 3 space experts, industry, academia, and government. So there are Ohio State people on there. There are other university people. We've got people from industry, people from NASA, and they remotely connect to your classrooms by video link. So usually Zoom or Teams, one of those platforms, 1 to 5 times nominally. I mean, we had some registrations where the school lead said, I only want 1 visit just to kind of get the thoughts started, and that's all I want. And there were others who had, I don't know if we had more than 5, but we had a number that had them maybe every other week. But the format is kind of your choice. Question and answer. Some of you do more formal, almost design review style activities. A feedback session, perhaps it's your students who are sharing concept ideas, but these space professionals are very interested in helping your students go through that. Go ahead. So what is Starlab Expert Link in 25 words? So space experts forming panels that remotely link to K-12 classrooms, providing feedback and encouragement to students working on Starlab-based design challenge. And that's what we're doing. It's one of our experts there. It was Emily Matula, and she was actually at the in-person kickoff last week. And as Sandy mentioned, she is a spacewalk flight controller and trainer. So she trains astronauts in what's called the Neutral Buoyancy Lab down in Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. But then when they are on the International Space Station doing a spacewalk, she's instructing them on what they need to do. She and others. She's certainly not the only one. So who are the experts? Gosh, this is a really small subset of the list of fields. So aerospace engineering, agriculture, advanced materials, bioastronautics, biomedical sciences, just they're all over the place. And a number of them have applied in the astronaut program. They are not astronauts at this point, but there are some who are wanting that to be part of their future career. But they're people who can give feedback, encouragement, and support to the next generation of STEM talent, and that's your students. So why do you need Expert Link? Well, it's an opportunity to be engaged in a real-world design challenge with authentic expertise. And these experts are going to guide your students. And I think the most common comment I got from teachers was, my kiddos upped their game in a really big way, because all of a sudden there was this accountability that was outside of the classroom. Not the teacher isn't important, but I've got the space expert who is going to be logging in a week, and they asked me to think about something or go to a website or maybe sketch something out, and I'm going to do that. So expose the students to STEM professionals in their careers, and sometimes the conversations go there. Students will say, well, how did you get to do this job, and what did you do to prepare for it, that kind of thing. So anyway, but that's what Expert Link is, and I think that's why it provides you value. The way you sign up, it's pretty easy. You're a school lead, you register with OSLN for the design challenge. Sandy's talked about exactly how to do that. Within a few days after that, I have a portal basically where I can see that, and you will get an email from me with a link in it to register for ExpertLink. And there will be a bunch of things that you put in there about how many times, what's your grade level, some of the expertise perhaps that you're looking for. And then what I do is look at the experts that I have who have similarly registered and try to make matches and put a panel together for your class, for your school.
Can I add also, Howard
Mhm.
has done training with the experts. That's what we did last night. And we actually had an educator from all representing elementary all the way through high school who talked to the experts too about what students look like in their classroom. So, you know, the experts understand that if you have a second grader who stands up and walks around the room, it doesn't mean that they're not engaged. It just means they need to stand up and walk around the room, right? The experts understand what typical student behavior is for that age group. So it is never an issue for those experts. They understand that when they walk in, the teachers will be managing the students, and that you know, what's happening in the classroom are students that are engaged. So don't have fear that your students might embarrass you, because you know, the experts really want to engage with them.
The other thing is you get to, if you look at the third bullet here, you get to indicate a preference for who you want on that panel. I can't guarantee you'll get who you prefer because there may be lots of others who wanted the same person. But you get to go in. Each of my experts have to record a selfie style video, 1 to 3 minutes long, of them talking about what they do in their careers. And it will allow you to have an idea of who they are and how they might interact with your classroom. And you can say, gosh, I can really see that person interacting with my students. So, you know, that kind of a thing. So Space Bites. Now, this isn't something we set out to do last year. It's something we did midstream because we found out we needed it. So I'm sort of a fly on the wall in most of these sessions, meaning that I don't turn my video on or my microphone, but I was listening to some of the questions that students were asking, really good questions, but they were incredibly common across a lot of the schools, as you can imagine, because actually the first questions they ask are ones about microgravity and these kinds of things. So what we did is said, gosh, why don't we make it so all of the schools across the state, even those who don't have ExpertLink, but that are working on the design challenge, why don't we get them why can't we leverage this knowledge that our experts have in a forum, an online forum where students can ask questions. Now, students don't actually post the questions. It has to be through you, the school lead, online. Battelle manages this website. It's a searchable, sortable, filterable database of questions posed by your students through you, and then the experts go in usually within a day or two and answer those, either just by typing in an answer, or sometimes they give a video response, which is another option, and some of them did that last year. And it benefits not just your students working on your design challenge, but all of the schools across the state. So we're going to do that again this year.
Right. And even if you choose not to use an expert in your classroom, if you choose not to do ExpertLink, you still have access to Space Bites, right? Or if, you know, so, and it's also nice because if you don't have your expert coming into your classroom, let's say you do sign up for an expert and like your expert's not going to be with you for another 2 weeks, you then have the ability to type into this online session to get some of those questions answered in between.
So give me your questions on that. So I would encourage you to register as soon as you can. The reason being, the earlier you register, the earlier you will get a panel. And right now, okay, so I'll be honest, I have 33 experts. I had 38 last year. I hope to get more and to level off somewhere around 50, but we're expecting certainly in excess of 100 schools to be involved here. And so we may not have enough capacity. So I would ask that you register as soon as you can. And if you want an ExpertLink panel for your classroom, go ahead and register for that.
All right.
So there's a question,
Oh, there
Sandy.
is a question. I apologize.
It's okay. I can answer
it.
it, I think. Yeah, it says, do teachers usually do this challenge with their entire class? I was wondering about smaller groups this is more for you, Sandy. Smaller groups such as after-school programs or gifted enrichment classes.
The answer is yes, yes, and yes. We have had it where they have used it for just their gifted and enriched programs, which is fine. There was a teacher up in Putnam County who was the gifted specialist. So she did it with each of her gifted groups, I think second, third, and fourth grade. Then there was a teacher who does after school, they call it their STEM club. So she did it with her STEM club after school. That works as well. The one thing is that it needs to be school related, right? Like, so a YMCA can't do it because it's not connected directly to a school. But if a YMCA was in the school as part of their after school programming, and they wanted to do that and they can connect it to that IRN of the school, because that's how we do our counting, then that could happen. And then we have people who, we've had a couple schools where they've done it across the entire grade level. We have one school in Columbus that every single freshman in their entire freshman class had to do it because they wanted to teach their students about design thinking. So they had every single freshman have to participate in it. And then they held competitions within the school to figure out who was being presented. So the answer is yes, yes, and yes. And if ever there's a question like that, you can just email me directly. And I'm really happy to help you figure out how to make that work, because the most important thing for me is that students get exposed to things that they didn't know. I mean, this is an opportunity for our students to be able to understand that they can live in Central Ohio, or they can live in the state of Ohio, and they can still have impact on space, right? There are careers that you can do and live in your home and still do them and still have impact on the rest of the world. And how amazing is that for a student to understand? So it really is, just bringing that passion to life is what we're trying to do. Any other questions?
That's all I see.
Okay. I hope I answered that well enough. Also, we are going to talk a little bit about Ohio Academy of Science. So if any of you have ever done science fair, this is where that connection comes in. It is 5th grade through high school. So this is not available to elementary students. Casey Harris is their program coordinator, and I will be sharing this slide deck. If you can, before you leave today, make sure you put your email address, because we did not have registration for this. Put your email address into the chat, and then I will be able to get to you the links for the slides for today, links for the videos, all of the things that we covered today. I have that all on a Word document, and I'll just email you the Word document with the link, including the information for both Casey and Christine, so that if you have questions about those programs, you'll be able to access them as well. The Science Day is a very well-established program in the state of Ohio. It's grades 5 through 12. There is a Buckeye Science and Engineering Fair as well, and that's in person. The ISEF qualifier, the ISEF is going to actually have their international competition in Columbus in May of this coming year. So it's kind of exciting. So if you have a high school student or that wants to do the Buckeye Science and Engineering Fair, they would have the opportunity to go to the international competition as well. And then there's Ohio STEP. And Ohio STEP is grades 6 through 12. And that's much more of like a business, where students have to write a business plan. And it's much more about entrepreneurship and like how you develop a product, and then how do you develop a business plan around that product. I am not doing these programs justice. So if you have questions about these, please let me know, and I'll make sure I can get you in touch with Casey. The place or the way that they do their competitions is something called Project Board. And on Project Board, there are links to many, many different things. If you're not sure about whether or not you want to do any of the OAS programming, you can actually go into OAS, and up at the top it says Project Libraries, and you can look at former projects that students have done. Even if you're stuck on the design challenge and you want to go look for things that students might be able to do to inspire them, this is a great resource to be able to do that. And then this is just what shows up in that in our guidebook as well. It basically says, like, if you're doing step 1, which is our, idea of imagining, right? If you're doing step 1 for the design challenge, that information will go into your hypothesis and engineering design statement if you were doing OAS Science Day. And if you were doing Ohio STEP, it would go into your identify problem and target customers. So it's like the beginning of those. It's not going to be fully, right? In OAS and an OAS step, you are going to be adding to that, but it's like the beginning part of that. The information that you do for step 2 for the design challenge directly falls into the science day, directly aligns, and then it's part of your solution and your STEM background for Ohio STEP. So we tried to really do a nice crosswalk for you so that if you want students to do all of them, you are able to do that across the board. It's just a great way for students to extend. They also have scholarships that they give. We do not have scholarships that we give for winning. It's just the experience of being able to go to the competition and the learning for the design challenge, and to have the obvious benefits of working with experts. But when you get into OAS and also into Invention Convention, there are monetary things that are for students. There are scholarships available. There are other awards and prizes that they can win. So, and I would ask for questions on this, but I apologize, I am not an expert on it. But if you do want more information about it, again, just pop it in the chat and I'll be happy to get you in touch with Casey. And Christine, I think with that, I think you're up next.
Great, thank you. Well, I know it's late. Everyone has, I'm sure, had a long day, but I just wanted to let you know that with Invention Convention, your students have yet another home. So they can be working on the Ohio Design Challenge and also participate in Invention Convention, because Invention Convention is simply these escalating events, both virtual and in person, where our entrepreneurs, our inventors, our innovators gather and they get a real world audience. So they are talking to marketing people, they are talking to engineers, they are talking to educators, they're talking to college professors and describing all of their hard work. And we have some state events. We also are connected into the National Invention Convention and Invention Convention Americas, of which we just had 3 Ohio Invention Convention students participate in the Americas with students from Mexico. So when you are doing your design challenge, Invention Convention simply adds on the aspect of innovation and invention, meaning that your students must research to claim an invention, to claim a unique and novel solution to a problem. So if you could switch to the next slide. This is just an overview of what Invention Convention is, but your students seem to be doing a lot of this through the design challenge. Now with Invention Convention, they do need a prototype. So you could spend that time after submitting your video to the design challenge, building a prototype, researching that their invention is truly a unique solution. And then again, we're working to these real world events and market-worthy innovations. If you think our kids, our youth don't have the answers to some of the problems, they do. They have patents. Every year we have 10, 11, 12 students nationally getting patents as young as kindergarten. Well, kindergartners filing for patents, and then it takes a couple of years. So your students can come up with the next great inventions. Next slide, please. And so Invention Convention is not just STEM. Again, they'll be speaking to experts in a multitude of careers, marketers, entrepreneurs, college professors, educators, like we all are. Invention involves so much more than STEM. It's entrepreneurial. It's the marketing side of invention. So your students will come up with a name for their invention, draw their logo, come up with a tagline, and explore intellectual property, because these are ideas that they are coming up with. They'll think about the environmental and social impacts of their invention. So we love STEM, and invention is STEM plus. Next slide, please. And then please get in touch with me and visit our website. Definitely would love to talk more about it. I was just taking some notes, learning the design challenge. You have plenty of time to do both of these. The invention conventions are not until later in the school year. Our deadlines are later in the spring. And if you are interested in learning how to teach how to guide your students through design thinking and the invention process. I am hosting a professional development at COSI on Wednesday, October 23rd. So please, that is my email right there. Get in touch with me. I will give you the information. And I have just seen what Invention Convention does to my own students. It's truly life-changing. So I would love to help you help your students learn how to invent. And thank you so much, Sarah and Howard, for having me here tonight.
If you could, Sarah, Christine, can you put your email into the chat?
Oh, sure. Great.
And then maybe your
Great
website
idea.
as well, right? Because that would be very helpful too, I'm sure, to the teachers that are on
Great
here.
idea. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions for Christine?
And please don't hesitate to email me if something comes up.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, we worked really diligently to make sure that our deadlines were well in advance so that things could move smoothly. So we've been working for about 18 months to try to make sure all of our calendars coordinate between all three of these opportunities so that your students could go from one to the other to the other. So please take advantage if you feel so inclined. This is a great slide to take a picture of. It is just our basic overview of everything that you will be needing to have for dates if you're thinking about doing any of this. And again, if you get over tonight and you find yourself overwhelmed and you're like, I really think I want to, but I don't know how, please reach out to me. I have worked with educators across the state from all the way from kindergarten all the way up even through career tech on different things like this. So I'm very well versed. I can give you a starting point. And I can help you and I can support you because that is what my job is to do. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can actually see all of you again. And I am going to stop our recording. And if you have any questions, please let me know.